You will have heard it mentioned over and over again throughout all of the different seasons of Power Rangers, the Morphin Grid. What was originally just a throwaway term has become something deeply embedded into the Power Rangers mythos. But what exactly is it? Well, let's find out. The Morphin Grid is a multiversal energy field for all Power Rangers, regardless of whether they are alien or human. It was first mentioned in the 4th episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and then assumed and since proven to give power to all Rangers, and each team of Rangers has a specific link to the grid. Rangers use their morphers to create entries into the grid, and the powers are instantaneously entered into their cellular makeup when finished morphing. So that's the main definition of what exactly the grid is. But let's delve a little deeper. The first actual mention of the Morphin Grid by name was by Zordon, when he first mentioned that a part of some one-off technobabble when he recalibrated the grid to locate Jason Lee Scott on the viewing globe when he had to fight a lone battle against the King Sphinx, which, side note, is one of the coolest Monster of the Week type bad guys in all of Power Rangers, in my opinion. In retrospect, however, this was a really strange thing for Zordon to say, as it's a power source and not a system in the command center. It was at one point mentioned by Lord Zed that the grid is maintained by a balance between major forces of good and major forces of evil, for example Zordon and Zed himself within that time period. Although it's unclear if this was accurate or if Zed was essentially just showing off his knowledge in front of Goldar. It also sort of works like a psychic's crystal ball, allowing Rangers a small glimpse of future Rangers and battles. Other malevolent entities can tap into the grid's power or collect its data for their own purposes. Many have done this to create or become evil versions of Rangers, take control of Zords and Megazords, provide energy sources for or create weapons, monsters and other things. They even provide countermeasures against the Rangers and block out or cut off access to the grid entirely. The grid can only contain a single bearer, each of a certain power, meaning when two or more of the same colour or power type try coexisting, one has to go. This is shown when the grid suffers an imbalance from Trent Mercer and his clone. This is also mentioned when Zordon forbids the use of the second pterodactyl power coin, stating a line that has become somewhat synonymous with memes. Too much pink energy is dangerous. Oddly enough, the grid does not fluctuate erratically when Lauren Shiba is introduced as the true Red Samurai Ranger. This may have been due to Lauren's use of an older Samuraizer when in comparison to the newer one used by her brother Jaden. It also doesn't seem to matter when the Quantum Ranger appears in Time Force. I know they are technically different Rangers, but there are essentially two Red Rangers in that season. If anybody has an explanation for that, please comment down below and clear that one up for me. Much of the grid is unknown or not explained in the series, although Zordon mentioned twice that the destruction of the Ranger Zords also means the loss of their powers, as with the Thunder Zords. This is most likely true only for teams such as the original Power Rangers, as many subsequent generations lose their Zords and their powers remain intact, though in some cases only temporarily. This is another thing that I couldn't find a definitive explanation for. In the comics, it was theorized by Jen Scotts that the grid can manipulate the space-time continuum should something catastrophic happen, as the linear timeline is separated into different universes following the death of Tommy at the hands of his alternate self, Draken, since he is important to the Rangers as a whole, that the grid literally separates errors to isolate Ranger teams so deaths of other previous members do not affect later ones. Yes, this does get a little confusing. I find it very interesting that, at first, the Morphin Grid was just a random thing mentioned in Technobabble to explain the unexplainable. However, in the episode A Zeo Beginning Part 2, Saban used it as a source of the Rangers' powers to explain how the Zeo Crystal gave the Zeo Rangers their powers. And one final theory that I love about the Morphin Grid comes from the YouTube series Death Battle, where they suggest that, throughout all of the fight scenes within Power Rangers, when sparks fly off the Rangers' suits when they get hit, it's speculated that that actually could be energy of the grid taking hits for the Rangers. Which in my opinion makes a lot of sense, seeing as the Rangers suffer blasts and strikes that would normally seriously harm and or kill a normal person. To cut a long story short, the Morphin Grid is vital. It's contradictory. It is everything yet nothing. But one thing's for sure, without the grid, there would be no Power Rangers. Well, unless they are man-made powers like in Lightspeed Rescue. Again, unsure on that one. That's it from me today, my friends. Don't forget to leave some comments down below suggesting what you would like to see covered in future videos on this channel. But for now, thank you all so much for watching, may the power protect you, and I will see you next time on the 6th Ranger.